It started with a photograph. Not just any photo. A black and white candid, soft focus with just enough blur to make the subject feel like a memory. She was laughing, really laughing, head tossed back, eyes closed, wind catching strands of her hair. I wasn't in the photo, but I was the one who took it. Back then, I thought it captured her spirit. Turns out, it captured something else entirely. A truth I wasn't ready to see. Her name was Morgan, and I met her the same way most people meet the people they swear they'll never fall out of love with, by accident. She walked into my studio wearing a rain-soaked coat and carrying a camera that looked like it had been dragged through war. Said she needed someone to help develop film for a wedding shoot gone wrong. You ever process someone else's disaster? She asked, shaking the water off like a dog. No, I said, but I've caused a few. She laughed. I fell in love with the sound of it. We moved fast. Too fast, maybe, but when the rhythm's right, you don't question the song. We married in a courthouse with one witness and 2 donuts instead of rings. I thought we were rebels. Turns out, we were just impatient. Morgan had this way of making the mundane feel cinematic. Grocery shopping felt like a montage. Laundry became a shared inside joke. She'd stare out the window on rainy nights and narrate the weather like she was filming a noir. Fog tonight, she'd murmur, sipping cheap wine. Perfect for heartbreak. Foreshadowing, if I've ever heard it. Now here's the kicker, I wasn't suspicious. Not once. I wasn't the paranoid type. I gave her space because that's what love is supposed to be, right? Trust, freedom, shared playlists, and separate calendars. We were the envy of our friend group. People called us the artist couple. She took the portraits. I edited the world into something beautiful. Life was good. Until it wasn't. It began with a job offer. An invite from some up-and-coming gallery in San Diego. They wanted Morgan's work for a coastal exhibit, beach shots, sunsets, lovers on driftwood benches. She lit up like a Christmas tree. 3 months, she said, pacing the kitchen with her phone pressed to her cheek. All expenses paid. And they're offering me a stipend. It's huge. I'll miss you, I said, which wasn't exactly a protest. I'll fly back every other weekend, she promised. And we can video chat like lovesick teenagers. She kissed me with urgency. The kind you give when you already know you're leaving more than just the city. I helped her pack. Drove her to the airport. Watched her disappear past TSA with a wave and a grin. I had no reason not to believe that she was chasing her dream. After all, I'd encouraged it. The first 2 weeks were fine. Calls every night. Photo updates. Silly texts about gulls stealing her sandwich. I'd lie awake smiling, imagining her on some foggy boardwalk, chasing light like it owed her money. But in the 3rd week, the calls stopped coming first. Then they got shorter. Then, well, but I'm getting ahead of myself. It started with silence. Not a dramatic, storm the room kind of silence. No, this one crept in quietly. Like a draft through an old window. You don't notice it until you're cold. Morgan's messages came less often. The conversations got clipped, shorter, like she was trying to keep me at a distance without actually hanging up. Sorry, babe, bad Wi-Fi, she'd say mid-call. Long day, she'd text back to a simple miss you. One night, I called and she didn't pick up. That wasn't a red flag by itself. People get busy, but what stuck with me was the delay. 3 hours later, I got a photo. Just a photo. Her feet in the sand, waves coming in, captioned, needed a moment to myself tonight. Hope you understand. No voice. No call. Just toes and tide. I told myself it was fine. She was an artist, artist brood. They wander. They need time to feel. But when your wife sends you a seascape instead of saying, I miss you too, something in your chest shifts. I didn't tell anyone. Not my friends, not my brother. Because what do you say? My marriage feels like it's being slowly vacuum sealed and I'm too polite to scream. But I felt it. One weekend, she didn't fly back. Said there was a mix-up with the gallery schedule. The next weekend, she blamed food poisoning. By month 2, I'd stopped asking when I'd see her. She always had an answer. But never the right one. I tried to be supportive. Sent her playlists. Flowers. A leather-bound notebook with our initials etched on the cover. She posted a story on Instagram, her opening night. The notebook was on a shelf behind her. Next to a wine glass. Next to a man's hand. Just a hand. But the hand wasn't mine. You ever zoom in on a picture with your heart in your throat? Looking for answers in the grain of a pixel? That was me. I told myself it was a fan. A curator. Somebody harmless. I turned my phone off and poured a drink. That night, she didn't call. And I didn't text. For the first time since she left, the silence felt mutual. I told myself everything was still okay. She was just caught up in her work. She'd come back. She always came back, right? But as I lay in our bed that suddenly felt too big, too cold, I noticed something. The last photo she'd sent me, the one with her feet in the sand, there were two sets of footprints. Mine weren't there. You ever open an email and feel your stomach drop before the image even loads? That was me, Wednesday morning, 8:12 a.m. I was sitting at the studio, editing portraits of a couple that still believed in each other, when Morgan's name popped up. Not her number, not her voice, just a shared Google Drive folder titled San Diego Final Edits. We used to share work all the time. Peer reviews, tweaks, color corrections. So I clicked it, like muscle memory. I should have known better. The folder had a series of beach shoots. Nothing unusual, sunsets, silhouettes, couples holding hands under fading light. Beautiful work. She had an eye for romance, even if she'd misplaced it lately. Then I opened the last folder. It was titled Personal, and that's where I saw it. Morgan on the pier, arms wrapped around someone who definitely wasn't me. His face wasn't visible in most shots, but Morgan. Morgan looked alive in those photos in a way she hadn't in months. She looked happy, effortlessly so. Then came the time-stamped selfies. Hotel room. Champagne. Her wrapped in a white robe, his hoodie on the chair in the corner. One of the last pictures in the sequence hit different. Not because of what it showed, but because of what it said. A note. Scrawled on a napkin. Barely legible, but clearly hers. He still thinks I'm coming home. That's the moment something inside me stopped. I didn't yell. Didn't throw my chair. Didn't burn the photos or smash the monitor. I just sat there, breathing. The silence in the room wasn't heavy anymore. It was surgical. Cold. Clean. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was a plan. She hadn't just drifted away, she'd packed her heart in someone else's suitcase and labeled mine storage. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I made coffee. Black. No sugar. No hope. And I began my own project. Not a tantrum. Not a desperate plea for closure. No, I started crafting a response. You see, if Morgan had been documenting her secret life in images, well, so could I. I had something she didn't. A memory. And a plan. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's quiet. Polished. Framed in matte black and hung in a place you'll never forget. People always assume revenge is impulsive screaming, throwing things, deleting files in a fit of rage. That's not how I work. And it sure as hell wasn't how I was going to let her see me fold. You cheat on me? Fine. But you don't get to rewrite the story. So I wrote it first. I spent the next 2 days going through everything I had of Morgan. Every photo, every clip, every behind-the-scenes snapshot we'd ever taken. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I cataloged her. Archived her. Like an extinct species. She once told me photography wasn't about freezing time. It was about telling the truth. So I figured, why not take her advice? That week, I pitched an idea to a small downtown gallery I'd worked with before. They owed me a favor. I made it sound conceptual, poetic. The Decay of Memory, I called it. A photo series about the dissolution of modern love through candid imagery. They loved it. I submitted my work under a pseudonym J.D. Ellis. The initials of my grandfather, and the middle name she always forgot I had. Petty? Absolutely. But we're just getting started. The exhibit had 2 phases. Phase 1, the dream. Photos of Morgan and me in better times. Laughing. Traveling. Her dancing barefoot on the porch. The image I took of her twirling in that red dress on our anniversary. All printed in soft pastels, backlit with warm tones. People would see those and think, God, they were perfect together. Phase 2, the lie. Her texts. Blurred shots of her silhouette leaving our house at midnight. The napkin from the hotel photo. A printed screenshot of her message to Jay reading, I just tell him I'm working late. He still doesn't get it. And at the very end of the exhibit, a single empty frame. Just white matting. Title, What I Got in Return. The opening night was set for a Friday, 3 months since she left for San Diego. I didn't tell her, of course, but I invited our mutual friends. Not out of cruelty. Just honesty. After all, Morgan always said art should be raw. Turns out, people love drama when it's framed nicely and served with free wine. The gallery buzzed with whispers. Everyone walked slowly, reverently. They studied the warmth in the early photos, then recoiled as the tone shifted. The colors darkened. The truth surfaced. You could hear the room change around photo 17, The one where she's in the passenger seat of a car, laughing, hand on a thigh that isn't mine. People noticed. Even better, they started putting the pieces together. I stood in the back corner the whole night, dressed in black, glass of Pinot in hand. Watching. Waiting. Then she walked in. Morgan. Late, of course. That effortless kind of late she always wore like perfume. She didn't notice me at first. Her eyes scanned the exhibit with a sort of curious detachment until she got to the third photo. Her shoulders stiffened. Her jaws set. By photo 10, she looked like she'd swallowed glass. And then she turned. Our eyes met. And she knew. She walked over, slowly, like a woman approaching a cliff she never thought she'd have to jump from. You did this, she said quietly, more stunned than angry. No, I said, voice calm. You did this. I just developed it. Her mouth opened, then closed again. There were 100 things she probably wanted to say, apologies, denials, excuses. But none of them could survive the weight of 24 curated betrayals hung on a gallery wall. She took a breath. You could have just talked to me. I smiled, and it wasn't kind. You could have just stayed faithful. We stood there, eye to eye, in the heart of my silent war. Her makeup was flawless. Her hair curled at the ends. But there was a crack in her armor. A tremble in her hands. You really think humiliating me like this is going to fix anything? She asked, voice low. No, I replied. But it sure made for a good exhibit. A couple nearby glanced over, clearly piecing it all together. Morgan turned, suddenly aware of the growing eyes on her. The whispers. The slow gasp that moved through the crowd as they realized the woman in the photos was standing right there. She left before the final frame. Didn't even make it to the empty one. I stayed. The gallery owner patted my shoulder. Raw stuff, man. They're saying it's the most honest collection we've ever shown. Thanks, I said, sipping my wine. I lived it. By the time the night ended, my inbox was full of requests. Reviewers. Bloggers. One guy wanted to buy the whole collection for a traveling exhibit called Art of the Modern Breakup. I said I'd think about it. On my way out, I paused in front of the last frame again. That blank space. People stared at it the longest. Some tilted their heads like it was symbolic. Others took selfies. But only I knew what it really meant. It wasn't loss. It was room. Room for whatever came next. Revenge is a dish best served cold. And sometimes, it's plated twice. The gallery show was just the appetizer. Sure, watching Morgan stand there with her soul unraveling on linen canvas was satisfying. People whispering, jaws dropping, her pride wilting under the gallery lights. Yes, that was dessert. But the main course? That would take finesse, precision, patience, and a little help from the truth. You see, I didn't just frame her betrayal for the art crowd. I'd also been documenting a few less photogenic truths. Things like a shared bank account she forgot existed. Or the fact that she never updated her emergency contacts when she left for San Diego. She left digital fingerprints everywhere, DMs, receipts, even a hotel loyalty card she accidentally linked to our joint email. Turns out, when you cheat with the attention span of a gnat, you leave breadcrumbs wide enough for a blind man to follow. So I followed. I didn't confront her. I let her sit in silence for 2 weeks after the exhibit. Let the discomfort ferment. I knew how she operated. She wouldn't rage. She wouldn't apologize. She'd rebrand her story. Tell herself she was the misunderstood artist who was portrayed unfairly by her bitter ex. Sure enough, her social media went dark for a while. When she finally resurfaced, it was in the form of a carefully filtered photo captioned, "Healing isn't linear, but truth is art. #onward. Cute. So I added my own truth to the mix. Enter the envelope. I mailed it to her studio, handwritten, untraceable, sealed like a wedding invitation. Inside was a printout of an email thread between her and Jay, the one where she said, "He's like a golden retriever, too loyal to notice." I highlighted it in yellow, underlined golden retriever, added a post-it that read, "Sit, stay, roll over, JD." Petty? Extremely. But she earned that one. She didn't respond. Not to me, anyway. But I heard through mutual friends that she was deeply disturbed by the violation of her privacy. Apparently, her version of morality starts after the cheating. Fine. But I wasn't finished. Morgan still had connections in the photography world, and the gallery show had put me back in demand. Invitations started trickling in, speaking panels, online interviews, art collectives. One even invited me to co-host a podcast episode about emotional realism and visual storytelling. Guess who else was on the guest list? Morgan. Oh yes. The event was a live Q&A over Zoom. She didn't know I'd be there. I used my pseudonym, J.D. Ellis, and no profile picture. When the moderator introduced us both, Morgan froze for half a second. Just long enough for me to smile. J.D., she said, after the host asked us to greet each other. Your work is haunting. I nodded. Yours is familiar. The moderator clapped like a preschool teacher trying to calm toddlers. Love that mutual respect. I kept it polite. Let her squirm. She tried to play the visionary, talked about art through vulnerability like she hadn't just wrecked a marriage to explore her inner muse. Then came the questions. One attendee asked, both of your recent work has dealt with themes of broken trust. Can you speak to the role of personal experience in shaping that? Morgan jumped in first. She spun a well-practiced yarn about how everyone experiences disconnection in different ways. I waited until she finished, then said, very evenly, I believe personal experience is essential, especially when the betrayal is still raw. That's when the lens doesn't lie. She blinked, said nothing. The chat window lit up with applause emojis. Afterward, the moderator asked if we'd be open to doing a joint exhibit in the spring. Morgan gave a tight smile. Let's see what the universe has in store. I said, only if she promises not to steal anything this time. Everyone laughed. Everyone except her. Later that night, I got a text from an unknown number. You proved your point. Can we stop now? I replied. We haven't even gotten to the credits yet. See, the thing about people like Morgan is, they don't think the rules apply to them. Not love, not loyalty, and certainly not consequences. She'd been protected by charm and ambiguity for too long. But I had something better than charm. I had receipts. You remember that gallery collector who offered to buy my exhibit? He didn't just want the prints. He wanted the story, the behind the scenes, the fallout, the full truth. Said it was culturally relevant. I said, you want a story? I'll give you 10 chapters and a closing statement. That's when I started drafting this. Not just for therapy. Not just for revenge. For record. Because someday she'll tell the story her way. She'll paint herself as the conflicted muse, the artist torn between worlds. But now, there's this. And this? This is my version. Unfiltered. Unapologetic. Unforgettable. She gets to keep her blurred selfies and pseudo-deep captions. I get something better. A legacy. They say time heals all wounds. They also say that about stitches, and I've seen plenty of those pop open under pressure. 3 weeks after the podcast and 4 months since the gallery show, Morgan started showing signs of controlled panic. Not the loud, crying kind. No, she's too composed for that. But the cracks were showing. Her artful healing posts dropped from daily to occasional. She'd started dressing differently too, less free-spirited boho, more buttoned-up minimalist. She looked like a woman trying to rebrand herself, one cardigan at a time. But the problem with reputations? You can't Photoshop the past. Not when someone keeps printing it in full resolution. See, I didn't want to destroy her. That'd be too easy. Too final. I wanted her to live in it. To wake up every day wondering who else knew the truth. To question whether the people smiling at her in passing were actually holding back judgment. Whether every compliment came with a silent asterisk. And the masterpiece? The real coup de grace? That came in the form of an opportunity one didn't expect. I got offered a book deal. An indie publisher, small, but respected. They'd seen my exhibit, read the reviews, and reached out with a simple question. Ever thought about writing the story behind your photographs? I hadn't, until that moment. But once the idea took root, I couldn't stop. I wrote for 2 weeks straight. Every night. Every morning before work. Sometimes in the middle of the night when sleep felt like a betrayal of clarity. The book wasn't a memoir, not in the traditional sense. It was a collection of photo essays, each one paired with a narrative. A memory. A moment. Some were sweet. Some weren't. Each chapter opened with a picture. Some from the early days, our wedding, her asleep on the couch with a book on her chest, sunlight catching the strands of her hair. Others, not so much. Shadows under her eyes from one too many lies. A blurred silhouette exiting our front door. The infamous napkin quote. All captioned with calm honesty. No rants. No dramatics. Just truth. Documented. Title? Exposure. Tagline? Every frame has a story. Some hurt. Some haunt. Some just end. The publisher loved it. Said it had raw elegance. Called it a quiet heartbreak you can hang on your wall. They wanted to print 5,000 copies for a first run. I approved it with one condition. A copy would be hand-delivered to every gallery Morgan had ever worked with. not out of spite. Just for context. See, she'd been making the rounds again. Rebuilding. Pitching new exhibits. Trying to position herself as someone shaped by trauma. That word, trauma, got tossed around like rice at a wedding. Only she forgot to mention she wasn't the one who got hit in the face with it. So, I helped with the correction. One gallery declined her submission outright. Another pulled her pending feature for ethical reconsideration. A third asked her for clarification on recent controversies surrounding previous collaborative works. I didn't gloat. I didn't post. But she knew. You can always tell when someone's ego takes a hit. It limps. I heard from a mutual friend that Morgan had gone full digital detox after the book dropped. Deleted most of her socials. Pulled out of 2 networking events. Even canceled a speaking gig on The Artist as a survivor. I guess being the subject of someone else's truth is a different kind of mirror. But the most telling moment came one evening, unannounced. She showed up at my studio. I was mid-edit. The door opened, and there she was, same eyes, less certainty behind them. I read it, she said, stepping in like the floor might bite. Hope you enjoyed the photography, I replied without looking up. She sat across from me in the visitor's chair, the one people used when they needed something. Her hands were clasped, knuckles white. I didn't come here to fight, she said. Or to beg. Smart. Neither would help your case. She winced. Just slightly. I didn't know it would go this far. Really? I finally looked at her. Because the moment you laughed at that text to Jay, you made your choice. I just gave it a frame. She blinked. Once. Twice. You made me look like a monster. No, I said calmly. You made you look like a monster. I just didn't crop it out. She exhaled sharply, like she'd been punched. People won't hire me now. I'm getting messages. Hate. Judgment. You've ruined everything. I leaned forward, hands folded on the table between us. You didn't lose work because of me, Morgan. You lost work because your brand was based on honesty, and now everyone knows you're allergic to it. We sat there in the silence. Her face slowly crumpling, not in sorrow, not even in guilt. Just realization. That's what truth does. It doesn't slap. It sinks. She stood, smoothed her shirt. You win. I tilted my head. This wasn't a game. That's what you never understood. She left. Didn't slam the door. Didn't look back. And just like that, the ghost was gone. I sat there for a while. Not victorious. Not broken. Just clear. This was never about revenge. It was about balance. About making sure the truth got equal airtime. About taking the version of me she tried to bury under lies and giving him the mic. The strange thing about winning is how quiet it gets afterward. No music. No applause. Just stillness. After Morgan left my studio that night, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt finished. Like closing a book you'd carried around for years. Pages dog-eared, some stained with coffee or something less innocent. But finally, you get to that last page, and instead of a twist, there's just a period. No cliffhanger. No redemption arc. Just the end. I didn't tell anyone she showed up. What was the point? I wasn't collecting sympathy points. I'd already made my point in ink, on walls, and frames. Now came the part no one talks about, rebuilding. And let me be honest, rebuilding isn't glamorous. It's not Rocky running upstairs. It's bills on the table. It's waking up to silence you didn't ask for. It's realizing you can put the extra toothbrush away. Again. But it's also peace. Not the loud kind. The kind that sneaks in when you're drinking your coffee and realize you don't have to brace yourself for the sound of another lie. I focused on work. I started mentoring young photographers again. I went out more. I said yes to things I used to dodge, dinners, gallery walks, even a weekend hiking trip where I nearly fractured my pride on a wet slope. One night, I got a message from a client, a couple I had shot for 2 years ago. They were having a baby. Wanted me to do a maternity shoot. Said they trusted me to capture something real. That hit harder than expected. Because after everything, real still mattered. And somehow, I still knew how to see it. Morgan didn't disappear. People like her don't vanish. They recalculate. I saw her name pop up 6 months later on a small website, tied to an art residency overseas. Denmark, I think. She had a new artist bio. No mention of the San Diego exhibit. No mention of me. Her style had changed too. No more intimacy. Now it was landscapes. Ice, fog, abandoned towns. Her captions sounded like someone trying to write with gloves on. One gallery quoted her, "I no longer photograph people. People lie." That line stayed with me. Not because it was profound, but because it proved she still didn't get it. The camera never lies. The person behind it might. But the lens? The lens just records. She reached out again after that article dropped. Just one line. Still feels like you're in the room. I didn't respond. Some ghosts are better left haunting their own mirrors. I ran into Jay. Not on purpose. Grocery store parking lot. He was getting out of a silver Jeep, wearing a t-shirt that said, "Grind Don't Stop," which told me everything I needed to know about his personality and his Wi-Fi password. He recognized me before I recognized him. Smirked. Nodded. Hey, man. No hard feelings, right? I stared at him. Really looked. He had that smile, empty calories. No weight. Just surface charm, like a job interview in human form. No, I said. No feelings at all. He laughed. That's good, bro. That's real healthy. I walked away before he could say anything else. Not because I was angry, but because I realized something. I didn't owe him, or her, or anyone that part of me anymore. Not my anger. Not my hurt. Not even my attention. That chapter was closed. And I wasn't cracking it open again for a guy in a t-shirt with motivational thoughts. People ask me if I'll ever fall in love again. And I get it. It's the natural next act in the script. Cue the healing, the meet cute, the slow-motion montage with coffee dates and candid laughter. But here's the thing. Love isn't a sequel. It's not some guaranteed encore after betrayal. Sometimes, love just changes shape. These days, I love quietly. I love my work. I love my dog, who doesn't lie and always waits by the door. I love slow mornings and music that doesn't remind me of her. I still take portraits. But I ask different questions now. I don't just look for beauty. I look for honesty. You can spot it. The way someone holds their partner's hand, not like a prop, but like a promise. The laugh that wrinkles their eyes. The pause in their breath before they say, "I do." That's what I shoot now. Not the illusion. Not the fantasy. But truth. Framed. And if there's a moral here, if there's one takeaway after 10 parts of heartbreak, art, betrayal, and grit, it's this. Some people will treat your love like it's disposable. Like it's a placeholder until something shinier comes along. Let them. Because the moment they walk away, you're free to turn every ounce of that pain into something permanent. A truth no one can take back. A frame they can't escape. A story worth telling. And this was mine.